Captain Lee Hanna stood on the bridge of the UES Taeguk, watching the stars through the main screen. She was only 26 years old, but she commanded one of Earth's most powerful battle cruisers. The crew around her worked quietly, checking systems and reading reports from across the galaxy. Hanna looked at the data pad in her hands. More bad news from the outer colonies. 3 more ships had gone missing near the Vega system. Pirates, maybe. Or something worse. She had seen enough battles in her short career to know that the galaxy was not a safe place for humans. "Captain," said Commander Park Ji-hoon, walking up to her command chair. He was older than her, with gray hair and tired eyes. He had been her teacher at the academy years ago. Now he was her second in command and one of the few people who truly believed in her abilities. "What is it, Park?" she asked, not looking up from her reports. "Message from Fleet Command. Admiral Yang wants all captains to report for an emergency meeting in 1 hour." Hanna finally looked up. Admiral Yang never called emergency meetings unless something big was happening. She had served under him for 3 years now, ever since her promotion to captain. He was tough but fair, and he had given her a chance when others thought she was too young. "Any idea what this is about?" she asked. Park shook his head. "No, but I heard rumors. Something about long-range scouts detecting movement in the outer systems. Big movement." Hanna felt a chill run down her spine. She had been expecting something like this for months. The human colonies had been expanding fast, maybe too fast. They had made enemies along the way. Some species saw humans as a threat that needed to be stopped. "Tell the crew to prepare for possible combat operations," she said, "and get Chief Engineer Kim up here." Kim Minho arrived on the bridge 5 minutes later. He was a short man with quick hands and a brilliant mind. He could fix anything on the Dole ship, and he had saved their lives more times than Hanna could count. "Captain, you wanted to see me?" he said, wiping grease off his hands with a dirty cloth. "How are our weapons systems, Kim? Are we ready for a real fight?" Kim nodded. "Everything is working perfectly. The new plasma cannons are installed and tested. Our shields are at full power. If someone wants to fight us, we are ready." "Dr. Choi." Nari came onto the bridge carrying her medical bag. She was the ship's doctor, and she always seemed to know when trouble was coming. She had treated wounded soldiers on a dozen worlds, and she never lost her calm, even in the worst situations. "Captain, I have the medical bay ready for casualties," she said quietly. "I hope we do not need it, but I wanted you to know." Hanna looked at her 3 officers. These people trusted her with their lives. The whole crew of 800 trusted her. Sometimes that thought kept her awake at night. She was so young compared to the other captains in the fleet. What if she made the wrong decision? What if people died because of her mistakes? But then, she remembered the battle at Colony Sejong. She had been just a commander then, serving under Captain Williams on the UES Horizon. When the pirates attacked, Captain Williams was killed in the first wave of enemy fire. Hanna had taken command of the ship and the small fleet defending the colony. Everyone thought they would lose. The pirates had more ships and better weapons, but Hanna saw something others missed. She noticed that the pirate ships always attacked in the same pattern. They were predictable. So she set a trap. She ordered the human ships to retreat, making it look like they were running away. The pirates chased them thinking they had won, but Hanna had positioned her ships near an asteroid field. When the pirates followed them in, she turned the fleet around and attacked. The asteroids blocked the pirates' escape routes. In 30 minutes, the battle was over. After that victory, Admiral Yang promoted her to captain. She was the youngest person ever to command a battlecruiser. Some people said she was lucky, others said she was too young and inexperienced. But Admiral Yang believed in her, and that was enough. "Captain," the communications officer called out. "Admiral Yang is starting the meeting now." Hanna walked to the communication console. The main screen showed Admiral Yang's weathered face. Behind him, she could see dozens of other captains joining the meeting. Some she knew well, others she had only met briefly. All of them were older and more experienced than her. "Captains," Admiral Yang began, his voice serious, "I will not waste time with pleasantries. We have a serious threat approaching our space. Long-range scouts have detected a massive fleet moving toward Earth's outer territories. This is not a raiding party or a small attack force. This is an invasion fleet. The screen changed to show a tactical display. Hana felt her heart sink as she saw the numbers. Thousands of enemy ships organized in perfect formations. This was bigger than anything humans had ever faced. The enemy calls themselves the Hegemony, Yang continued. They are a coalition of alien species who believe that human expansion threatens their control of this part of the galaxy. They have decided to stop us permanently. One of the older captains spoke up. Admiral, how long do we have? 2 weeks, maybe 3. They will reach the Centauri Gate first. That is where we will make our stand. Hana studied the tactical display. The Centauri Gate was a natural choke point, the best place to stop an invasion fleet. But even there, humans would be outnumbered badly. She started running calculations in her head, trying to find a way to win against such overwhelming odds. All ships will form up at the Centauri Gate within 72 hours, Yang ordered. We will establish a defensive perimeter and hold the line. No matter what the cost, we cannot let them reach Earth. The meeting ended, and the screen went dark. Hana stood in silence for a moment, thinking about what lay ahead. Around her, the bridge crew waited for orders. These people trusted her to lead them into battle and bring them home alive. Park, set course for the Centauri Gate, she said finally. Maximum speed. Kim, I want all weapons and shields checked again. Everything must be perfect. Dr. Choi, prepare the medical bay for heavy casualties. As the Teguk turned toward their destination, Hana looked out at the stars one more time. Somewhere out there, an enemy fleet was coming to destroy everything she cared about. But she would not let that happen. She was young, yes, but she was also determined. And sometimes determination was more important than experience. The youngest captain in fleet history was about to face her greatest test. The Hegemony fleet came out of hyperspace like a metal storm. Hana watched from the bridge of the Teguk as thousands of enemy ships appeared on her screens. She had seen the numbers in reports, but seeing the actual fleet was different. It was terrifying. The enemy ships were huge and dark, built by species that had been conquering worlds for centuries. At the front was the largest ship Hana had ever seen, easily 10 times the size of her battlecruiser. Intelligence reports said it belonged to Overlord Kethvar, the alien commander who had destroyed 17 different civilizations. All ships, this is Admiral Yang, came the voice over the communication system. Remember your training. Stay in formation. Watch your sectors. Today we show these aliens what humans are made of. Hana looked around her bridge. Her crew was ready, but she could see the fear in their eyes. They were facing an enemy that had never lost a war, but they were still here, still willing to fight for their homes and families. Captain, reported the sensor officer, enemy ships are moving into attack formation. Count is over 3,000 vessels. 3,000 against 47 human ships. The odds were impossible, but humans had faced impossible odds before. They were still here, still fighting, still growing stronger. The first wave of enemy attacks began. Captain Yoon Tae-hyung of the Soul's Pride led the human vanguard, his ship's new plasma weapons cutting bright lines through space. His ship was smaller than the enemy vessels, but it was faster and more maneuverable. Direct hit on enemy cruiser, reported the tactical officer. Their shields are down, but for every enemy ship that was damaged, 3 more took its place. The Hegemony had numbers, and they were not afraid to use them. They moved in perfect formations, like they had practiced this battle 1,000 times. Captain Song Mira tried to flank the enemy with her destroyer squadron. The Busan Thunder and 5 smaller ships moved around the enemy's right side, hoping to attack their weak points. But the aliens were ready for this move. Enemy ships surrounded Mira's squadron, like a trap closing. Busan Thunder is taking heavy damage, reported the communications officer. Captain Mira is requesting assistance. Send the Gwangju Defender to support her, Admiral Yang ordered. Hana watched as the battle developed on her tactical screens. Red dots showed human ships, blue dots showed the enemy. There were far too many blue dots, and some of the red dots were already blinking. showing ships that were badly damaged. The enemy was smart. They were not just trying to destroy human ships. They were studying how humans fought, learning their tactics, finding their weaknesses. Every time a human captain tried a new strategy, the aliens adapted quickly. Captain Zhang Wusik commanded the heavy cruiser Daejeon's Hammer. When he saw the Gwangju defender get hit by enemy fire, he broke formation to help rescue the survivors. It was the brave thing to do, the human thing to do, but it created a gap in the human defense line. The aliens saw the gap immediately. 3 enemy cruisers pushed through, forcing the human fleet to fall back. In the confusion, more ships were damaged. The Soul's Pride lost its main engines. The Ulsan Fury had a hull breach on 3 decks. All ships, fighting withdrawal to secondary positions, Admiral Yang ordered. His voice was calm, but Hana could hear the strain. They were losing, and everyone knew it. As the human fleet pulled back, Hana studied the enemy formations on her screen. Something bothered her about the way they moved. The alien ships were powerful, with better weapons and stronger shields than human vessels. But they always moved in the same patterns, following the same tactics. "Park," she said to her second-in-command. "Look at the enemy formation. What do you see?" Commander Park studied the display. "They are very organized, very disciplined. They follow their battle plan exactly." "Yes," Hana said. "Too exactly. They do not adapt to what we do. They just follow their plan, no matter what happens." This gave her an idea. Humans were weaker individually, but they could change their tactics quickly. They could be unpredictable. Maybe that was their advantage. The retreat to the secondary defense line cost them 12 ships, 12 captains who would never go home, to their families, 12 crews who had died fighting for humanity's future. Hana felt the weight of each loss. In her ready room that night, she studied the casualty reports. Every name represented someone who had trusted human leadership, who had believed they could win against impossible odds. She memorized the names, promised herself she would never forget them. Commander Park found her there at 3 a.m, still working on tactical plans. "Captain, you need sleep," he said gently. "I need to find a way to beat them," she replied, not looking up from her work. "There has to be a way." "Maybe there is," Park said, sitting down across from her. "You saw something during the battle today. What was it?" Hana pulled up the battle recordings on her computer. She showed Park how the enemy ships moved, how they always followed the same attack patterns even when it did not make sense. "They are like a machine," she said. "Very efficient, very powerful, but not creative. They do what they are programmed to do, nothing more." "And humans?" "Humans are chaos." Hana smiled for the first time that day. "We do things that do not make sense. We take risks. We try new ideas. Maybe that is enough." The next day brought worse news. Intelligence reports showed the hegemony fleet was already moving toward Earth. They were confident that humanity's military was broken, that the remaining ships could not stop them. Overlord Kethvar sent a message to all human colonies. He spoke, in perfect English, his alien voice cold and mechanical. "Humans of Earth, you have seen the power of the hegemony. Your fleet is scattered and weak. Surrender now, and we will allow your species to exist as servants. Refuse, and we will destroy every human world, every human ship, every human life. You have one day to decide." The message ended, and the bridge fell silent. Hana looked at her crew, saw the anger and determination in their faces. These people would never surrender no matter how hopeless things looked. "Communications, send a reply to the hegemony fleet," she ordered. "What should the message say, Captain?" Hana thought for a moment. "Tell them that humans do not surrender. Tell them that if they want Earth, they will have to take it from us. Tell them we will be waiting." As her message was sent across space, Hana began planning something that no military academy would ever teach. It was dangerous, probably impossible, and definitely crazy, but it was also human, and sometimes being human was enough. The second battle at Proxima Station was hell. Hana watched from the Teguk's bridge as the hegemony fleet approached with new tactics and weapons. They had learned from the first fight, adapted their strategies, and brought even more ships. Captain Han Seojin commanded the carrier Incheon Rising. She launched her fighter squadrons first, trying to protect the civilian ships that were still evacuating from Proxima Station. Her pilots were brave and skilled, but the enemy had prepared for them this time. Enemy point defense systems are targeting our fighters, reported the tactical officer. They are shooting down our pilots faster than we can launch them. Hana felt sick watching the small red dots disappear from her screen. Each dot was a pilot, someone's child or parent or friend. The enemy had studied human fighter tactics and built weapons specifically to counter them. The evacuation ships were huge and slow, filled with families trying to escape the war. They could not fight back, could only run and hope the fleet could protect them. Captain Seojin moved her carrier between the civilians and the enemy, using her ship as a shield. Incheon Rising is taking heavy damage, the communications officer reported. Captain Seojin says they cannot hold much longer. Other human ships moved to help, but the enemy was everywhere. The hegemony had spread their fleet in a wide formation, surrounding the human ships like hunters trapping animals. Captain Lim Soo-young commanded the destroyer Ulsan Fury. Her ship was already damaged from the first battle, with hull breaches and failing systems. But when she saw an enemy dreadnought moving toward the evacuation ships, she made a decision that would save thousands of lives. All ships, this is Ulsan Fury. Her voice came over the communication system. I am making a ramming attack on the enemy dreadnought. Tell my family I died fighting. Hana watched in horror and pride as the small destroyer accelerated toward the massive enemy ship. The Ulsan Fury's engines were pushed beyond their limits, glowing white-hot as the ship gained speed. The collision was like a small star being born. The destroyer's antimatter engines exploded on impact, tearing through the enemy dreadnought's armor. Both ships disappeared in a ball of plasma and twisted metal. Captain Soo-young gave us an opening. Admiral Yang's voice crackled over the communications. All ships protect those evacuation transports, whatever it takes. But the enemy kept coming. For every ship they lost, the hegemony had 10 more waiting. Captain Kang Hyun-woo of the Jeju Wind held his position until every civilian transport had jumped to hyperspace. His ship was torn apart by enemy fire, but he never moved from his post. The human fleet was dying, ship by ship, captain by captain. These were the best military minds Earth had ever produced, officers who had fought pirates and raiders across the galaxy. Now they were falling like leaves in a storm. Admiral Yang's flagship, the massive dreadnought Seoul, became the focus of enemy attacks. Overlord Kethvar had brought his personal command ship into the battle, a monster of metal and weapons that dwarfed even the largest human vessel. Seoul is taking critical damage, reported the sensor officer. Their main reactor is failing. Hana wanted to move the Teguk to help, but Yang's voice stopped her. Negative, Captain Lee. Hold your position, that is an order. She watched helplessly as the Seoul's shields collapsed under concentrated enemy fire. The great ship that had led humanity's fleet for 10 years was burning. Its hull cracked open like an egg. Admiral Yang appeared on her screen one last time. His face was bloody, his uniform torn, but his voice was steady. Captain Lee, I am transferring fleet command to you. You are now in charge of what remains of our forces. Admiral, I cannot, you can and you will. Yang interrupted. You are the youngest captain we have ever had, but you are also the smartest. Find a way to save our people, Hana. That is my final order. The screen went dark as the Seoul exploded, taking Admiral Yang and 800 crew members with it. Hana felt the weight of command settle on her shoulders like a heavy cloak. At 26, she was now the commander of humanity's fleet. What was left of it anyway? She looked at her tactical display. 14 human ships remained operational, scattered across the battlefield. The enemy still had thousands. By every military calculation, the war was over. Humanity had lost, but humans did not give up easily. All ships, this is Captain Lee, she said over the fleet communications. Form up on the Teguk. We are withdrawing to Earth, Captain Oh Ji-won commanded. The stealth frigate Mokpo Shadow. Her ship was designed for reconnaissance, not frontline combat, but she had stayed to gather intelligence on enemy movements. "Captain Lee," she reported, "I have bad news. The hegemony main fleet is already moving toward Earth. They plan to make an example of our homeworld, to show other species what happens when you resist them." Hana closed her eyes for a moment, thinking of Earth. Green forests and blue oceans. Cities full of people who trusted their military to protect them. Children who had never seen war. The remaining captains appeared on her communication screen. Captain Shin Dong-hae of the Changwon Strike, his ship's bridge filled with smoke from damaged systems. Captain Lee Yuna of the Pohang Sentinel, her young face grim with determination. A handful of others, all that remained of Earth's great fleet. They looked to her for leadership, these experienced officers who had fought across the galaxy. She was the youngest person in the group, but they trusted her to find a way forward. "Captains," she began, "we cannot win a traditional battle. The enemy has too many ships, too much firepower. If we meet them in open space, they will destroy us in minutes." "Then what do you suggest?" asked Captain Dong-hae. Hana had been thinking about this since the first battle. The idea was crazy, the kind of plan that would get her court-martialed if it failed. But conventional tactics had already failed. It was time to try something that no enemy would expect. "We are going to use Earth itself as a weapon," she said. "The enemy expects us to meet them in space, to fight a clean military battle. Instead, we are going to draw them into our solar system, where we can use every advantage we have." She explained her plan to the other captains. It involved using Earth's moon as a massive weapon platform, turning mining equipment into military hardware, and sacrificing their ships to create the perfect trap. When she finished, the bridge was silent for a long moment. "Captain," said Commander Park quietly, "this plan will require us to let the enemy get very close to Earth. If we fail, there will be nothing left to stop them. If we do nothing, they will destroy Earth anyway," Hana replied. "At least this gives us a chance." One by one, the other captains agreed to the plan. They knew it was dangerous, probably suicidal, but it was also their only hope. As the small human fleet set course for Earth, Hana thought about all the captains who had died, fighting for humanity. Their sacrifice had bought time for this last desperate gamble. She would not let their deaths be meaningless. The youngest captain in fleet history was about to attempt the most audacious military operation ever conceived. It would either save humanity or ensure their extinction was swift. Earth's moon had never been a weapon before, but Hana was about to change that. She stood in the command center deep inside Luna City, watching as engineers worked frantically to convert mining equipment into the largest guns humanity had ever built. The mass drivers were enormous machines designed to launch cargo into space. They used powerful magnetic fields to accelerate containers to incredible speeds. Captain Baek Jisoo of the engineering vessel Andong Builder had spent 2 weeks recalibrating them for a very different purpose. "The mass drivers are ready, Captain," Jisoo reported, her hands covered in grease and her eyes red from exhaustion. "We have loaded them with tungsten rods instead of cargo containers. When fired at near light speed, they will hit with the force of nuclear weapons." Hana nodded, studying the tactical displays around her. The hegemony fleet was approaching the solar system, confident in their victory. Intelligence reports showed they were not even trying to hide their movements. Overlord Kethvar wanted everyone in the galaxy to see humanity's final defeat. "How many rounds do we have?" she asked. 60 shots from each mass driver. We have 12 drivers operational, so that gives us 720 rounds total, 700 shots against thousands of enemy ships. It would have to be enough. The human fleet waited near Luna, positioned to look like they were making a desperate last stand around the moon. To the enemy, it would appear that humanity was using the moon's bulk for cover, trying to protect their ships behind the natural satellite. Hana's remaining ships were spread in a defensive formation, 13 vessels, each commanded by officers who knew they were probably going to die today. But they stayed anyway, because this was their home, and someone had to defend it. "Enemy fleet entering the outer solar system," reported the sensor. Officer. Count is still over 2,000 ships. Through the command center's windows, Hana could see Earth in the distance, a blue and green jewel hanging in space. Down there, 4 billion people were going about their daily lives, not knowing that the next few hours would determine whether humanity survived or became extinct. All ships, this is Captain Lee, she said over the fleet communications. Remember, we need to make this look like a real defensive position. Let them get close before we spring the trap. The hegemony fleet moved into the solar system like a conquering army. Their ships were in perfect formation, weapons charged and ready to deliver the final blow to human civilization. Overlord Kethavar's flagship led the formation, massive and dark against the stars. They are taking the bait, reported Captain O. Jiwan from her stealth frigate. The Mokpo shadow was hidden behind an asteroid, watching the enemy approach. The main fleet is moving directly toward Luna. They want to destroy our ships in front of Earth to make their victory more dramatic. That was exactly what Hana had hoped for. The enemy's arrogance would be their downfall. Wait for my signal, she ordered all ships. Do not fire until I give the word. The enemy fleet came closer, their weapons lighting up space with targeting beams. They were so confident of victory that they were not even spreading out. They stayed in their tight formations, making themselves perfect targets. Firing range achieved, reported the weapons officer. Hana took a deep breath. This was the moment everything depended on. If her plan failed, humanity would be wiped out within the hour. All mass drivers, she said into her communicator, fire everything you have. The moon shook as 12 massive electromagnetic launchers fired at once. Tungsten rods accelerated to nearly the speed of light, invisible until they struck their targets. The lead enemy ships had no time to react, no time to raise shields or take evasive action. The first salvo tore through the hegemony's front lines like they were made of paper. Ships that had survived 1,000 battles were obliterated in seconds, their hulls vaporized by the kinetic impacts. Explosions lit up space as antimatter reactors went critical. Direct hits across the enemy formation, reported the tactical officer, his voice filled with amazement. We destroyed over 200 ships with the first volley. But Hana knew this was just the beginning. The enemy would adapt quickly, spread out to make the mass drivers less effective. The real battle was about to start. Overlord Kethavar's voice boomed across all communication frequencies. Clever humans, but you have only delayed your extinction by a few minutes. The surviving enemy ships broke formation and spread out across the solar system. Some moved to attack the moon directly, others tried to get around behind the human fleet. But Hana had expected this. All ships, execute Plan Delta, she ordered. Captain Ryu Minseok of the destroyer Gyeongju Blade was the first to act. His ship had been badly damaged in the previous battles, its hull cracked and systems failing. But the engine still worked, and that was all he needed. For humanity, he said over the communications, and launched his ship directly at the enemy formation. The Gyeongju Blade accelerated toward the largest enemy cruiser, dodging plasma blasts and missile strikes. Minseok held his course even as his ship was torn apart around him. At the last second, he triggered his ship's self-destruct. The explosion created a gap in the enemy lines, exactly where Hana needed it. Captain Im Ha-young followed immediately, with a Suwon spear. Her ship had been fitted with an experimental ramming prow designed for exactly this kind of attack. She drove her vessel into an enemy command ship, the reinforced bow punching through armor plating like a knife through paper. One by one, Hana's captains made the ultimate sacrifice. Each death was carefully planned, designed to inflict maximum damage on the enemy fleet. Captain Park Sung-hoon of the Yosu Tide took out an enemy weapons platform before his ship was overwhelmed. Captain Jung Chae-young of the Jeonju Light held the line until her reactor went critical, taking 3 enemy ships with her. The mass drivers continued firing, each shot precisely aimed at enemy weak points. But the enemy was learning, adapting, their tactics to avoid the devastating tungsten rounds. The battle was becoming a race between human ingenuity and alien adaptability. Captain, Commander Park said quietly, we are down to 4 ships. The Taeguk, the Mokpo Shadow, the Changwon Strike, and the Pohang Sentinel. 4 ships out of the 47 that had started this war. Hana felt the weight of all those lost lives, all those captains who had trusted her with their final moments. The enemy was closing in now, their remaining ships forming a circle around Luna. Overlord Kethvar's flagship moved toward the moon, its massive guns charging for a final bombardment. "This ends now, young human," the alien commander broadcast. "You have fought bravely, but courage cannot overcome superior numbers forever." Hana looked around the command center. Her officers were tired, bloodied, but still fighting. On Earth, billions of people were depending on her to succeed. All across human space, colonists were waiting to see if their species would survive this day. She thought about all the captains who had died, all the crews who had followed orders that meant certain death. They had given everything for this moment, this last chance to save humanity. "All remaining ships," she said into her communicator. "This is our final stand. Make every shot count." The Tiguk turned toward Overlord Kethvar's flagship, its weapons charging for one last battle. Around them, space was filled with the wreckage of both fleets, testament to the price of this war. The youngest captain in fleet history was about to face the enemy commander in single combat, with the fate of humanity hanging in the balance. The Tiguk drifted alone through the wreckage field where the greatest space battle in human history had just ended. Twisted metal and debris from thousands of ships floated past the viewports like a graveyard of civilizations. Captain Lee Hana stood on her damaged bridge, looking out at the destruction she had helped create. Her ship was barely holding together. The hull was cracked in dozens of places, sealed with emergency patches that would not last much longer. Half the crew was dead or wounded. The engines were offline and life support was running on backup power. But they had won. The hegemony fleet was gone. Of the 2,000 ships that had entered the solar system, fewer than 50 had escaped. The rest were scattered across space in pieces too small to identify. Overlord Kethvar's massive flagship was a drifting hulk, its commander dead in the final moments of their personal duel. Hana touched the bandage on her left arm where alien plasma had burned through her uniform. She had faced Kethvar in single combat when their 2 ships had been locked together, both vessels too damaged to break apart. The alien commander had been larger and stronger, but Hana had been faster and more desperate. Now she was the last. Of the 47 captains who had answered Admiral Yang's call, only she remained alive. Every other ship had been destroyed or damaged beyond repair. The weight of that responsibility felt heavier than the ship around her. Commander Park found her in the observation deck staring out at the stars. His left arm was in a sling and he walked with a limp, but he was alive. So many others were not. "The rescue ships from Earth will be here in 6 hours, he reported. "Medical teams are standing by for the wounded." Hana nodded but did not look away from the viewport. "How many did we lose, Park?" 93,000 dead across all ships, he said quietly, including 46 captains and their entire command crews. 93,000. The number was too large to really understand. Each one had been someone's child, parent, friend, or lover. Each one had trusted her to lead them to victory, and she had led them to death instead. "They saved humanity," Park said as if reading her thoughts. "Every one of them died so that Earth could live." Dr. Choi Nari entered the observation deck, her medical bag slung over her shoulder. She looked exhausted but relieved. The doctor had worked for 18 straight hours treating wounded crew members, saving as many lives as she could. "Captain, you should let me check that arm again," she said. "Alien plasma burns can be tricky to heal." "Later, Doctor," Hana said. "First, I need to make my final report to Fleet Command." She walked to the communications console and activated the recording system. This would be the last log entry she would make as Fleet Commander, the official record of humanity's darkest and greatest hour. "This is Captain Lee Hana, commanding officer of the UES Tiguk, making final report on the Battle of Luna," she began. At 14:30 hours, Earth Standard Time, the hegemony invasion fleet was defeated in the Sol system. Enemy casualties are estimated at over 90%. Human casualties are severe. She paused, thinking of all the captains whose names she would read at memorial services for years to come. The following officers gave their lives in defense of humanity: Admiral Yang Dae-sung, Captain Yoon Tae-hyung, Captain Song Mira, Captain Lim Soo-young, Captain Kang Hyun-woo. The list went on and on. Each name represented not just a life lost, but a tactical genius, a leader who had shaped humanity's growth among the stars. They had been the best of their generation, and now they were gone. The enemy has been stopped, she continued, but they will return someday. Perhaps in decades, perhaps in centuries, but they will return, and when they do, humanity must be ready. She ended the recording and sent it to Earth. Soon the politicians and admirals would analyze every decision she had made, every tactic she had used. Some would call her a hero. Others would question whether the victory had been worth the cost, but that did not matter now. What mattered was that Earth still turned in its orbit, that human children could still play in green fields under blue skies, that the species would continue to grow and spread among the stars. Chief Engineer Kim found her as she was writing personal messages to the families of her fallen crew members. He looked older than his years, his face lined with exhaustion and grief. "Captain, I wanted you to know," he said. "The crew has set up memorial walls for all the ships we lost. Every corridor has pictures and names of the captains and crews who died. We will never forget them." Hana nodded, unable to speak for a moment. These people had followed her into the impossible and trusted her to bring them home. Most would never see their families again, but they had saved billions of lives in the process. Hours later, the rescue ships arrived from Earth. Medical personnel rushed aboard the Taeguk to treat the wounded. Engineers began assessing the damage to determine if the ship could be repaired or would need to be scrapped. Hana stood in the docking bay, watching as the bodies of her crew were transferred to the rescue ships. Each one was covered with the Earth flag. Each one would receive a hero's funeral, but their families would still be alone, still have empty chairs at dinner tables. A young ensign from the rescue ship approached her with a message pad. "Captain Lee, Fleet Command wants you to return to Earth immediately. They want a full briefing on the battle." "Tell them I will come when my crew is taken care of," she replied. "Not before." The ensign looked surprised but nodded and walked away. Hana had learned that rank and protocol mattered less than taking care of the people who depended on her. A week later, she stood before the Council of Earth giving her testimony about the war. The politicians asked difficult questions about her tactics, about the cost in human lives, about whether the victory had been worth the price. "Captain Lee," asked the council chairman, "do you believe humanity is safer now than before this war began?" Hana thought carefully before answering. "No, sir, I do not. The hegemony knows we exist now. They know we will fight. That makes us more dangerous to them, which means they will come again with better weapons and more ships. But they also know that destroying humanity will not be easy. And the cost? Nearly 100,000 dead? The cost was terrible," she said. "But if we had surrendered, the cost would have been 4 billion dead on Earth alone, plus everyone in the colonies. The captains who died saved more lives than they lost." Later that year, Hana was promoted to admiral and given command of the new fleet academy on Mars. Her job was to train the next generation of officers, to prepare them for the wars that would surely come. On her office wall, she hung portraits of 46 captains. Every morning, she looked at their faces and remembered their sacrifice. Every graduation ceremony began with reading their names aloud, so that the young officers would know the price of leadership. She told her students about the day humanity stood alone against the dark, when a few dozen ships faced thousands. She taught them that heroes were not made in moments of glory, but in the choice to stand when standing seemed impossible. "Never forget," she would tell each new class, "that you are not just defending ships or territory. You are defending the idea that humanity deserves to exist among the stars. That is worth any price." Years passed. The colonies grew stronger, the fleet was rebuilt, and new technologies were developed. But the galaxy remained dangerous, and other species watched humanity with new respect and new fear. Captain Lee Hanna, the youngest fleet commander in Earth's history, had become Admiral Lee Hanna, the teacher of humanity's future. She had been the last captain to survive the war, but she would not be the last to fight for humanity's place in the universe. The stars waited, full of promise and threat, and humanity was ready for both.